That's all I needed for him to do that. And it became personal with me. It became personal with me. It became personal with me.
Can you guys imagine what would have happened if Will Smith slapped Michael Jordan? Sheesh, guys. I'm not even going to go there, but here are 7 stories that prove Michael Jordan was a savage. If there's one thing about Jordan, it's that he had an insatiable desire to dominate anybody in anything and everything. Basketball was always too small for a figure like him. He was transcendental, in a way no athlete had been before. It's no surprise then that MJ looked outside the basketball court to find ways to entertain himself. So, once upon a time, Michael Jordan went out golfing with a former president of the United States, Bill Clinton. Being the president of the time, Clinton was used to presidential expectations, such as teeing off closer to the hole than his opponent to get a slight advantage. And who in their right mind would deny the leader of the United States this? Well, Clinton once tried doing that to MJ, and
that's all I needed for him to do that, and it became personal with me.
His airness then proceeded to say to the president, "You're going to play from the little girl's tee?" When Clinton heard that, he smiled, then turned to MJ and said nonchalantly, as a gust of wind blew between the two of them, "A man is more than the sum of all the things he can do." After saying that, he proceeded to dominate the golf match and broke 100, just like how Jordan challenged him to. Okay, he didn't say that quote there, and then I was just kidding about that, but it would have been cool if he did, right? Anyway, next off, Rodney McRae didn't smile like Bill Clinton did when Jordan started his trash talk. Going into the 1992-93 season, the Bulls were planning on completing their first three-peat, and so they signed a 31-year-old Rodney McRae to bolster their offense. Jordan and McRae seemed to be getting along well at first. I mean, at the time the Bulls acquired Rodney, MJ was saying nice things like, "Rodney is a very versatile player, he's a good rebounder, a good defensive player that can fit right into our game in terms of having a ball handler who can rebound, bring the ball up court, and start our break. That's going to be very helpful to us." After hearing that, Rodney probably went up to Jordan and said, "Thanks, man. That was very kind of you." Then, when Michael heard that, he probably,
That's all I needed for him to do that, and it became personal with me.
By the time the All-Star break came around, multiple insiders from the Bulls locker room suggested that he had practically ruined Rodney McRae. The word they used was ruined, and for good reasons, because reports stated that Jordan would play one-on-one with Rodney and constantly beat him while shouting things like, "You're a loser. You've always been a loser." Rodney had averaged double figures in scoring for pretty much his whole career, but that season with the Bulls, he averaged 3.5 points per game, and he retired after that season. Sheesh, guys. Talk about tough love going south. Anyway, moving on here. When it comes down to it, Jordan's biggest rival was always Father Time. Even then, the stubborn maestro just couldn't let it go. When people said he was too old to play basketball,
That's all I needed for him to do that, and it became personal with me.
Like I was saying, when people were saying he was too old to play basketball anymore, he returned for the Wizards in 2000 and reaffirmed to the world that only the chains of old age could really bind him down. Didn't mean he wouldn't go down without a fight, though. That's what it felt like when he announced to the world that he would get back to his playing weight at 218 pounds, the weight he was when he conquered the NBA world. Fans were excited about what the announcement meant, and some even speculated a return at age 50 to once again scratch the itch of domination that Jordan is so used to. I mean, he was even speaking about how he'd be guarding LeBron James, for goodness sake. Alas, it wasn't meant to be, and even though fans saw a significantly trimmed down Michael in the 75th anniversary of the NBA, an NBA comeback is nowhere to be seen. For now. Anyway, next off here, during the 1992 Dream Team summer, MJ was starting to get bored of basketball. I mean, he just came off winning a championship at the time, and international competition in basketball at the time was a piece of cake for Team USA. The Dream Team's head coach was Chuck Daly, who also happened to be head coach of the Bad Boy Pistons, who blocked MJ for several years in his quest for a championship. Well, one day, the two went out for a round of golf, and Chuck won the game by one shot. Just one shot. I'm not sure what MJ felt at the time, but if I had to guess,
That's all I needed for him to do that, and it became personal with me.
well, the next morning when the sun was just about to rise, Daly's phone was ringing. When Chuck didn't answer the calls, the next thing he heard was... When Chuck didn't answer the door pounding sounds continued. Michael just wouldn't go away. Well, when Chuck finally got tired of it all, the two of them had the rematch. MJ won that game. Chuck would go on to coach the Nets, and in a regular season matchup where the Nets were matched up against Chicago, the Nets were completely destroyed by the Bulls. After the game, Jordan went over to Chuck and said, "Don't ever beat me in golf again." Yikes, guys. Okay, let's move on to the next one now. Jordan believes in the old adage, if you ain't cheating, you ain't really trying. Because that's exactly the attitude with which he played cards against a North Carolina teammate's mother when he went to the house of Buzz Peterson. Why else would he be pushing the limits of mortality for a card game that has literally nothing at stake? So she was probably winning at the time, maybe chuckling a bit, and because of that, deep inside, Mike,
That's all I needed for him to do that, and it became personal with me.
In this story, Jordan attempted to change cards and looked at his opponent's cards while she was in the bathroom. The anecdote should tell you two things concerning Michael. First, he doesn't do it for any financial gain. It's strictly competition to him, and frankly, he can't live a moment without competing against someone and beating them at their own game in their own house. And secondly, do not go to the washroom when playing cards against MJ. Just don't do it. Next up here, I got a story that includes Antoine Walker, a former NBA player who was notorious for spending every single penny of his $110 million that he earned as an NBA player. So, one day, he rolled up to a workout in a Ferrari where Michael Jordan was also present. It was a flex of how much of a baller he was, and for MJ...
That's all I needed for him to do that, and it became personal with me.
Michael wasn't impressed with Walker's attempt at being the alpha dog, and for the next 7 days, MJ rolled up in a different Ferrari every single day with matching jumpsuits. And Antoine couldn't compete with this. Not many people could. Next off, if there was a speech that encompassed everything about a person, it's gotta be MJ's speech at his Hall of Fame ceremony. People thought that a decade away from the court had probably cooled him down, that now that he was away from the competition, he would be a docile man that would just come to the stage, say his thank yous and goodbyes, and vanish forever into NBA history. Boy, oh boy, were they ever wrong or what? Turns out Michael hadn't forgotten anything about his career. Even more, he had forgiven absolutely nothing. In a legendary speech, he opened up with a story of how he was left off his high school team and even mentioned the player that was selected over him by name. Then he proceeded to name drop every single person that ever doubted him, including his high school coach. He went on to accuse the stars of the 80s for freezing him out of All-Star games so that they could slow down his eventual climb to the top. Nobody was spared. This was MJ at his finest. I mean, even the man who was presenting him that evening didn't go unscathed. Michael Jordan was a savage, and he was the ultimate competitor. And because of these two qualities, he became the best NBA player ever. Anyway, if you want to become the best ever, then you gotta click on this video right over here. And the truth is, I'm already on the other side.